I always believed that nothing in life could truly shake me anymore. Not after clawing my way out of a childhood home that barely qualified as a shelter. Not after building a business from scratch. Not after losing friends, money, and even my marriage along the journey. But pain has a funny way of surprising you, especially when it comes from the one person you never imagined would wield it like a weapon, your own child. My daughter, Madison, stood across the table from me at her rehearsal dinner. 200 guests, cameras flashing, wine glasses clinking. She looked stunning in her pearl silk gown, every inch of her radiating a life polished to perfection. A life I had worked myself half to death to give her. Then she opened her mouth and destroyed me in a single breath. "Dad," she said, her voice steady cold, almost rehearsed. "You don't have to hover around me tonight. Preston's family already thinks you're, too common. Please try not to embarrass us." I blinked, thinking I'd misheard. She didn't stop. "It's just, you're kind of like peasant stock, Dad. You don't really fit with people like us." People like us. As if she wasn't raised on my paycheck. As if everything she had, her education, her wardrobe, every luxury, hadn't come from the very man she was belittling. The room fell silent. A few guests turned away, pretending they hadn't heard. Madison didn't soften. She didn't laugh it off. She didn't say she was joking. She just stared at me like I was a stain on her evening. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't yell or cry or ask her how she could say something so cruel. I simply stood up, pushed in my chair, and walked out. But every word she'd spoken lodged itself in my chest like shrapnel. I remembered them all. 3 days later, after her lavish wedding, where I wasn't invited because my presence would ruin the Blackwoods image. My phone rang. Madison. Not to apologize. Not to explain. Not to check if I was okay after humiliating me in front of 200 strangers. "Dad," she said, as if nothing had happened. "I need to talk to you. It's important." Her voice trembled, not with guilt but with urgency. I could hear the panic, the pressure, the desperation she was trying to hide. "All right," I said. "Talk. Not over the phone. Please. In person. It's about something big." That should have been my first clue. Madison only used that tone when she wanted something expensive. "I'm at the restaurant," I said. "Come if you want." 20 minutes later, she walked into the South Shore location of Harris Home Kitchen, the restaurant she once mockingly called embarrassingly middle class. The same place where she learned to count her first dollar bill from the register when she was 6. Now she sat across from me, twisting her diamond wedding ring. One I knew cost more than most people's yearly rent. She looked pale, nervous, uneasy. "Dad, Preston and I are having a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Financial." She swallowed hard. "We're in trouble." I didn't react. I just waited. She finally said it. "Preston made some investments that didn't work out. Crypto, startup ventures, some international business deals. And he put everything we had into them." "How much did he lose?" She hesitated, then whispered the number like it tasted bitter coming out of her mouth. "About 700,000. I leaned back. $700,000 gone. But even that wasn't what shook me. It was what she said next. "And there are more debts. Credit cards. Personal loans. We're drowning, Dad." She wasn't crying, not yet. But she was cracking. I stayed quiet, letting her continue. "Preston's family, they're furious. They're saying it's my fault. That I brought bad luck." She looked down. "They're threatening to cut us off completely." Of course they were. Rich families like the Blackwoods were full of smoke and mirrors. Old money in name, but often hanging by a thread. "And what do you need from me, Madison?" She looked up with eyes that used to melt me when she was a child. "Your beach house." I stiffened. "The house in Cape Harbor?" I asked slowly. "My retirement home?" "Yes," she said quickly. "Just temporarily. We need to sell it for now, cover our debts. We'll buy it back when everything stabilizes." I stared at her. She didn't flinch. "You want me to give you my house?" I said. "So you and your husband can sell it to cover debts I had no part in creating." "It's not giving," she argued. It's lending. Family helps family, Dad. Family. The same word she didn't use when she called me peasant stock. Madison, I said slowly, that house is worth $2.6 million. I know, she replied without shame. That's why it's perfect. I exhaled. And what exactly do I get in return? You owe me this, she said quietly, her tone becoming sharper. After everything, the years I spent feeding her, supporting her, carrying her through life, apparently meant nothing. She leaned closer. Dad, please. Preston's family will disown him if he files for bankruptcy. We'll have nothing. You'll have what I had at your age, I said. Nothing. But I survived. That's different, she snapped. You didn't have anything to lose. I took a long, steady breath. Let me think about it. How long? She demanded. We don't have time. I'll call you, I said. She stood up without saying goodbye and walked out of the place she once claims embarrassed her. But she made one mistake that day. She showed me exactly who she had become. And I was done playing the fool. As I sat alone in my office that night, I didn't feel anger, or heartbreak, or even betrayal. I felt clarity. For the first time in years, I saw the truth. Not just about my daughter, but about myself. It was time to stop rescuing her from the consequences she created. It was time to stop enabling. Time to stop excusing. Time to stop buying her loyalty. But most importantly, it was time to teach her the lesson life had taught me the hard way. And she wasn't going to like it. Because before I made my decision about the house, I discovered something in her financial records. Something far worse than the debt she confessed. And it changed everything. When Madison walked out of the restaurant that evening, leaving behind the smell of grilled steak and simmering garlic, scents she once claimed clung to her clothes like poverty, I didn't chase after her. I didn't call her name. I didn't try to fix the situation like I'd done for nearly 3 decades. I simply locked the front door, turned the sign to closed, and went upstairs to my office. That office isn't fancy. No leather couch. No designer art pieces. No mahogany desk imported from Italy. Just a sturdy metal table, 2 chairs, a cheap lamp, and a wall full of memories. It was where I wrote payroll checks when I could barely afford groceries. Where I cried the night my wife left. Where I signed the loan papers for my first restaurant. And now, where I planned to decide the fate of the daughter who had once held my hand crossing the street, but now treated me like a burden to her lifestyle. I sat down, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. The truth was simple. Giving her the house wouldn't help her. It would destroy her, and possibly me. But I needed clarity. Logic, not emotion. There was one advantage I still had over Madison, something she had forgotten entirely. Until her 30th birthday, I still had legal access to her financial accounts. The trust fund rules. She never bothered to read them. She was so used to money being handed to her that she never imagined she'd need to understand how it actually worked. So, I opened my computer and pulled up her financial dashboard. What I found made my stomach tighten. The first thing that hit me wasn't the crypto losses she'd confessed. It wasn't the startup failures. It wasn't even the personal loans. It was the spending. The reckless, unbelievable spending. In the 6 months leading up to her wedding, Madison and Preston had spent over $200,000 on luxury items. $18,000 bags from Paris, $7,600 dinners in Manhattan, $32,000 shopping weekends in California, designer clothing bought in batches like they were disposable, and then the honeymoon, 12 days in Italy, private yacht, presidential suite, champagne breakfasts, wine tastings, private gondola tours, $67,840 on a single trip. A trip she enjoyed while telling me I wasn't classy enough to attend her wedding. I kept scrolling. The numbers kept climbing. Their combined debt wasn't $700,000 like she'd admitted. It was $847,000, nearly $1 million. On top of that, Preston had convinced her to dump her entire trust fund, $400,000, into a revolutionary marketing tech firm that turned out to be a polished Ponzi scheme. I rubbed my temples. This wasn't just irresponsibility. This was delusion. Then I found something worse. Something she hadn't meant for me to see. A message thread. Between her and her husband, Preston. My vision sharpened as I read. Preston. Your father's house is perfect. It'll cover everything and we can flip it fast. Madison. He'll hand it over. He always does. He acts tough but he caves. Preston. If he pushes back, guilt trip him. Bring up the wedding again. Madison. He owes me. After everything I put up with. Seriously. He should be grateful I even acknowledge him. I leaned back slowly. It was like getting punched in the throat. My daughter, my little girl, had reduced me to a bank account with legs. A convenient wallet. A backup plan. Someone to manipulate when life went wrong. I read the final message in the thread twice. Madison. Once he gives us the house, we can cut him off. Preston's family wants distance from people like him. A long silence filled the room. My heart didn't break, because it was already broken at the rehearsal dinner. Now something else replaced the pain. Not anger. Not revenge. Resolve. It was in that quiet moment that I understood something. If I handed her the house, she would sell it, waste the money, and still blame me when her life fell apart again. If I refused, maybe, just maybe, she would finally confront the truth that had been haunting her life. Money doesn't build character. Hardship does. I closed the laptop. Then I picked up the phone. Not to call Madison. Not to call Preston. Not to call my ex-wife. I called the one person who had believed in me long before anyone else did. St. Mary's Children's Home, a familiar voice answered. Sister Catherine, I said softly. It's Martin. Her breath caught. Martin, my boy. It's been years. Her voice still held warmth, comfort, patience. The voice that soothed me through nightmares at age 8. How's the home doing? I asked. Same old struggles, she sighed. We need a new building. Leaking roof, old heaters, too many children and not enough beds. But we survive. How much would a new building cost? I asked. Oh, Martin, she laughed gently. That dream is far too big. At least $2 million. Probably more. We could never afford. I can. Silence. Then a whisper. Martin. What are you saying? I want to fund the entire project, I said. Every penny. A brand new building for the children. And I want to do it publicly. Publicly? She repeated. Yes, I said. Because I want the world to see what really matters. Her voice cracked. Martin. This will change lives. So will what I do next, I replied. I hung up the phone. Then I looked at a picture on my wall. Me at age 10. Wearing shoes 2 sizes too small. Standing in the courtyard of St. Mary's. Holding Sister Catherine's hand. I had been given almost nothing. But what little I had shaped everything. That night I didn't sleep. I planned. And by morning the choice was final. I would give away the house. Not to Madison. Not to Preston. Not to the people who looked down on me. But to the children who needed it. The children I once belonged to. The children who reminded me of who I really am. Because when my lawyer finalized the donation papers, and the news crew set up their cameras, Madison and Preston showed up, thinking I was signing the house over to them. What happened next ended up on national television. The next morning, sunlight slid across my office window like a spotlight preparing a stage. And that's exactly what the room was about to become. A stage for the truth, for accountability, and for a lesson my daughter had spent years avoiding. I arrived at the office early, earlier than I had in months. At 8 a.m., David Chun, my attorney for over a decade, walked in with a stack of documents tucked under his arm. His tie was crooked, like he'd rushed out of the house. He was still adjusting it as he stepped inside. You're really going through with this? He asked without sitting down. Yes. He studied me for a long moment. David has seen me in my worst states. Angry, exhausted, grieving, overwhelmed. But he had never seen me this calm, this certain. He sighed, set the documents down, and opened the top folder. "This is the full donation agreement," he said. "Once you sign, the property is permanently transferred to St. Mary's. No reversals. No loopholes. No litigation. It is final." "Good," I said. "That's how I want it." He tapped the papers. "You understand that if your daughter tries to challenge this later, she won't have a legal leg to stand on." "I'm counting on that." David didn't smile. He didn't judge me either. He simply nodded and began arranging the paperwork on my desk. At 1:45 p.m., the next piece of the puzzle arrived. Channel 7 News. A reporter named Janet Morrison, tall, sharp-eyed, a woman who looked like she could smell a story 2 miles away, stepped into my office. "Mr. Harris," she said, shaking my hand, "you promised us a story worth filming. I hope you're not exaggerating." "I don't exaggerate," I replied. "You'll want your camera rolling from the moment they walk in." Janet raised a brow, instantly intrigued. "What exactly is happening today?" "A decision," I said simply. "A long overdue one." Her cameraman began setting up, adjusting lights, checking audio. The energy in the room shifted, tension layered over anticipation, like a storm gathering behind closed windows. At 2 p.m., the door creaked open again. Sister Catherine. Her small frame seemed even smaller beneath her neatly pressed habit, but her presence filled the room with a kind of quiet dignity. She clutched a folder of photographs showing the children of St. Mary's. Their broken beds, peeling paint, worn-out classrooms. "Martin," she whispered, pressing a hand to her chest. "I still can't believe this is happening." "It's happening," I said. "Today." Janet approached her with a warm smile. "Sister, we're honored you're here. I'm just grateful people will finally hear the children's stories," she replied. The room settled into an uneasy quiet. All we needed now were the two people I knew would walk in expecting something very different from what they were about to receive. At 2:24 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Madison, parking now. We're coming up." "Perfect." I positioned myself behind my desk. David stood in the corner, silent and observant. Janet flicked on the camera light. Sister Catherine sat gently on a chair near the window, hands folded. Then the door opened. Madison stepped inside first, wearing a tailored cream blazer, hair styled in soft waves, makeup flawless. She looked polished, expensive, and exhausted. Behind her came Preston, jaw clenched, tie perfectly straight, eyes scanning the room with thinly veiled irritation. They both froze when they saw the camera. "Dad? What's going on?" Madison asked carefully. I gestured toward the chairs in front of my desk. "Sit." They did. Preston crossed his legs and leaned back like a man about to negotiate a business deal he assumed he'd already won. Madison looked around, the camera, the nun, the reporter, her breathing quickening. "Dad, why is the press here?" "Why is she here?" she asked, motioning toward Sister Catherine. I folded my hands. "We're here to talk about my house. That's why you came, isn't it?" Preston nodded once, confidently. "Yes, we're ready to finalize things. Thank you again for doing this for us. It means a lot." His voice was suddenly smooth, polite, careful. The kind of tone a person uses when they believe they're in control. Madison gave a grateful little smile, but her eyes were calculating. "Dad," she said softly, "you have no idea how much this is going to help. You're saving us." Saving. That word hit me like acid. I inhaled slowly. "I am making a decision about the house," I said. "But not the one you expect." The air tightened. "What do you mean?" Madison whispered. I turned slightly toward the camera. "Janet, are we rolling?" "Rolling," she said. I nodded and faced Madison and Preston directly. "You came here today believing I was going to hand you my beach house. A house worth $2.6 million. A house you wanted to sell to pay off debts I had nothing to do with." Madison swallowed. Preston stiffened. "Well," I continued, "I am giving away the house." Their faces brightened. "But not to you." Silence hit the room like a thunderclap. Preston shot upright. "What?" Madison blinked rapidly. "Dad, what are you talking about?" I gestured toward Sister Catherine. I am donating the Cape Harbor property to St. Mary's Children's Home, effective today. Madison's mouth fell open. Preston's face flushed deep red. The camera captured every second. What? He barked. You can't do that. I lifted a pen, placed it on the papers in front of me, and looked them both in the eyes. I already am. Madison's voice cracked. Dad, wait. Please, you don't understand. I signed the first document. Preston slammed a hand on my desk. You old fool. Do you realize what you're doing? That house was our way out. I didn't flinch. Sister Catherine gasped softly. Janet's eyebrows shot up with the kind of excitement reporters dream about capturing. Your way out. I repeated. The house is mine. It was never yours. Madison finally found her voice, trembling. Dad, please don't do this. We need that house. And St. Mary's needs it more. I signed the second copy. Preston's voice turned sharp as a blade. You're ruining us. No, I said calmly. Your choices ruined you. I'm simply refusing to pay the bill. I signed the third and final page. The decision was complete. Madison broke. She sank forward, covering her face, sobbing into shaking hands. Dad, you can't do this, please, please don't. But it was done. Legally, permanently, publicly. Sister Catherine wiped tears from her eyes. Janet captured every moment. David nodded with quiet approval. I leaned forward and spoke gently. More gently than Madison expected. You once told me I embarrassed you, I said softly. Today, I hope I taught you what real dignity looks like. Her sobs grew louder. But it was too late. The lesson had begun. Because when the reporter asked Madison why she believed she deserved the house, and Preston snapped on live camera, the world saw their true colors, and everything spiraled out of control. The moment I finished signing the documents, the room fell into a stunned, vibrating silence. One of those rare moments where even the walls seemed to hold their breath. Madison's sobs echoed softly, raw and disbelieving, while Preston stood frozen, his hands balled into white-knuckled fists. Janet Morrison, the reporter who had been covering serious stories for over 15 years, recognized a moment of pure, unfiltered human truth. She lifted her microphone slightly, her camera operator leaning in to capture every detail. Mr. Harris, she said carefully, you've officially transferred your $2.6 million beach property to St. Mary's Children's Home, moments after your daughter asked for it to cover her debts. Can you explain your reasoning? I didn't look at the camera. I looked at my daughter. Because, I said gently, family doesn't manipulate each other. And charity deserves more than people who only remember you when they want something. Madison lifted her face, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Her voice was small, broken. Dad, why would you humiliate me like this? In front of cameras? In front of everyone? Her voice splintered. You destroyed us. You ruined everything. Janet took one small step forward. Madison, she said, her tone measured. May I ask you a question on behalf of our viewers? Madison wiped her face quickly, trying to regain some semblance of composure. What? Why? Janet asked softly. Did you believe you were entitled to your father's house? The air snapped. Preston moved instantly. That question is completely out of line, he snapped. She's his daughter, that's why. Family helps family. What kind of man denies his child support during a crisis? Janet held her professional calm. I'm simply giving Madison a chance to explain her side. Madison swallowed hard. Her voice trembled. I'm his daughter. He gave me everything growing up. Why would this be any different? I cut in quietly. You thought no matter what you said to me, no matter how you treated me, I'd still open my wallet. Madison closed her eyes as if the truth physically hurt. Preston, suddenly realizing he was being filmed saying too much, straightened his posture. His voice took on a forced politeness. Look, Mr. Harris Martin, let's just calm down and talk about this like adults. What you're doing is reckless. You're making an emotional decision that affects our livelihoods. There it was again. Your livelihood, I corrected. Not mine. Preston lost the last grip on his temper. This is absurd, he shouted. You're choosing a bunch of random kids over your own flesh and blood? Sister Catherine flinched at his tone, but she didn't move. Her quiet strength filled the room. Janet raised a brow. Her cameraman zoomed in. Preston realized too late what he'd said, and that it was now immortalized on film. You want to rephrase that? I asked him calmly. He sputtered. I didn't mean, I was just angry, but the damage was done. Janet, sensing a story crackling with electricity, gently shifted her focus to Sister Catherine. Sister, she asked, how will this donation help the children at St. Mary's? Sister Catherine clasped her hands, steadying herself. It will change everything, she said with quiet power. We have 47 children currently living in a building that is older than most of them. The roof leaks. The heating fails during winters. Many children share beds. Madison's crying softened. Sister Catherine continued. This donation will allow us to build new dormitories, a proper library, safe play areas, and give these children dignity. Something every child deserves. Something they rarely receive. Her words were simple, true, undeniably powerful. Janet turned back to Madison. Madison, after hearing that, do you still feel your father wronged you? Madison's mouth trembled. She inhaled shakily. I didn't know, she whispered. That's the problem, I said softly. You never asked. You never cared to know anything beyond your own world. Madison started to protest, but I gently raised my hand. I'm not saying this to hurt you, I continued. I'm saying it because all of this, didn't happen today. It's been building for years, and both of us knew it. She stared down at her hands. The camera caught the moment her denial cracked. But Preston was not done. This is ridiculous, he barked. We came here expecting your cooperation, because it's the least you owe us after how you embarrassed us at the wedding. Embarrassed you? My voice cut through the room. He continued digging his own grave. You think I wanted to tell my family about your background? You think it was easy explaining that my wife comes from a working-class father? Janet's eyes widened. Sister Catherine gasped. The cameraman zoomed in again. Madison turned toward him slowly, betrayal spreading across her face. You told your family what? She whispered. Preston tried to backpedal. I didn't mean, but it was too late. Madison stood abruptly, pushing her chair back. You didn't defend Dad. Not once, she said, voice cracking. You let them mock him. You joined in. Her realization washed over her like cold water. And I followed you, she whispered. I hurt my own father to impress people who never respected me in the first place. She was finally seeing it. Preston gritted his teeth. I didn't mock him, he hissed. I simply told them the truth. The truth, Madison snapped. I married a man who thinks charity is a waste of time, who calls children random kids, who looks down on my father for having dignity. Madison, Preston growled. Not here. Why not? She demanded. Because the cameras are on? Because now you're the one who looks bad. She wiped her face roughly. Dad, I didn't understand. I didn't see. But I see it now. Her voice cracked. Her hands shook. I'm sorry, but it wasn't the time for forgiveness. Not yet. Janet let the silence fill the room. It was the kind of silence that tells a fuller story than any headline ever could. You all just witnessed, she said carefully, addressing the camera. A moment of truth, a moment where values, family, entitlement, and compassion collided. Preston shoved back his chair. We're leaving, he snapped. This interview is over. He grabbed Madison's arm and pulled. But for the first time, she pulled back. I can walk on my own, she said quietly. And she did. They left the room without another word. The door closed behind them with a soft click. And suddenly, everything was still. Sister Catherine wiped her eyes. David exhaled. Janet lowered her microphone. looking at me with a mixture of awe and respect. "Mr. Harris?" she said softly. That was one of the most powerful moments I've ever recorded. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt free. For the first time in years, the weight I'd been carrying began to loosen. Because when the story aired that evening, across the city, across the state, across the country, the world reacted. And Madison? She faced consequences she never saw coming, and a humiliation even deeper than the one she had given me. By the time the news truck pulled away from my office and the last camera cord was packed into the van, the room felt strangely quiet, like the air itself was adjusting to what had just happened. Sister Catherine squeezed my hand before leaving. "Martin, you've done a holy thing today," she whispered. I didn't feel holy. I felt tired. But she smiled at me the way she used to when I was 8, as if she could see something good in me even when I couldn't. David stayed only long enough to make sure the documents were secure, legal, and irreversible. "They can't touch the house now," he said. "Good," I replied. Then he looked at me with something that might have been pride. "You know, not many people have the courage to draw a line like this, especially not with their own children." "Maybe I waited too long," I said quietly. He shook his head. "Maybe you waited just long enough." By the time evening rolled around, I found myself sitting inside my South Shore restaurant. My first, my favorite, the one built brick by brick from nothing. I wasn't watching sports on the TV. I wasn't looking at receipts or thinking about staffing schedules. I was simply eating a bowl of soup and waiting for the sun to set. At exactly 6:03 p.m., the Channel 7 logo flashed on the screen. Tonight's top story. Every fork in the restaurant froze in midair. Every conversation hushed. I didn't ask anyone to turn it up. The staff did that on their own. The screen displayed the footage. Me signing the papers. Sister Catherine speaking about the children. Madison crying. Preston yelling that I was choosing random kids over them. The exact moment he uttered the words, "Nobody cares about those useless children," the restaurant went dead silent. Then Janet's narration began. "A local businessman has made headlines today after donating his $2.6 million beach house to a children's home, moments after refusing his daughter's plea to use the home to pay off nearly $1 million in personal debts." The screen replayed Madison's trembling whisper, "Dad, please don't, you're ruining us." Then my response, "Your choices ruined you. I'm just refusing to pay for them anymore." A few customers whispered, "Damn," under their breath. Another shook his head. "He's right. You can't save people who refuse to help themselves." The commentator continued, "In a dramatic moment caught on camera, Mr. Harris's son-in-law made inflammatory comments about the children of St. Mary's, sparking outrage online. They cut to a clip of Preston snapping at Sister Catherine. Nobody in the restaurant missed that. Then, the footage that changed everything. Madison saying through tears, "Those children, they don't matter to me right now." The room inhaled sharply. Even I felt the sting. But then came my response. Soft, steady, unshakable. "That's the problem, Madison. You live in a world where the only people who matter are the ones who benefit you." The reporter summed it up perfectly. This public confrontation has sparked a national conversation about entitlement, boundaries, and the true meaning of family. When the broadcast ended, the room erupted. Not with chaos, but applause. Actual applause. It started with a woman near the back, then spread table by table until the entire restaurant was clapping. "For Mr. Harris," someone shouted. Maria, my head waitress of 12 years, tough enough to chase drunks out with a spatula, walked up behind me and wrapped her arms around my shoulders. "Boss," she said, "you did the right thing. Everyone here knows it." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. My phone buzzed incessantly. Hundreds of notifications. Text messages from numbers I didn't know. "You're a hero, man. Wish my dad had set boundaries like you. Those kids deserve that house more than rich brats. Respect. Your daughter needed that wake-up call." Even business partners I hadn't spoken to in months messaged me. "Proud of you. This is real fatherhood." But not all messages were supportive. My ex-wife, Linda, texted, "You've lost your mind. She's your daughter. How could you?" And Madison's cousin Jennifer wrote, "Uncle Martin, this will destroy your relationship with Madison forever. Fix it before it's too late." Preston sent a message so long it needed scrolling. I deleted it without reading past the first line. But the messages that shocked me most were the public reactions. Celebrities, local politicians, pastors, teachers, small business owners. Everyone weighing in. Hashtags started trending. Hashtag Harris did right, hashtag accountability parenting, hashtag stand for values, hashtag entitlement culture. And in the middle of those reactions, photos started circulating. Screenshots of Madison crying. Clips of Preston shouting. Memes, jokes, quotes, commentary. My daughter had wanted fame, just not like this. Around 8:40 p.m., my phone rang with an unfamiliar voice. "Mr. Harris?" "Yes. This is Megan Rivera from the Boston Post. We'd like to run a feature on you." "No, thank you," I said. "But your story is inspiring." "No," I repeated. I didn't want fame. I wanted peace. But peace wasn't in the cards yet. Because at 9:16 p.m., Madison called. Her voice was small, unsteady. Nothing like the confident woman who once called me peasant stock. "Dad, they're destroying me online," she whispered. "I can't breathe. People are calling me spoiled, heartless, disgusting." She sniffed, trying to hold herself together. "Preston's family is talking about cutting ties. They said I've embarrassed them. Dad, I'm scared. I don't know what to do." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "Madison, I'm not enjoying this. I'm not celebrating your pain." "Then why won't you help me?" she pleaded. "Because all of this, public humiliation, judgment, consequences, this is exactly what real accountability looks like." A soft whimper escaped her. I continued gently. "Maybe now you understand what I felt when you said I wasn't good enough to stand beside you on your wedding day." She couldn't answer, because she finally understood. But the night wasn't over. At 10:02 p.m., my phone buzzed again, this time with a message I didn't expect. "Mr. Harris, this is Good Morning America. We would like to fly you out and feature your story tomorrow morning. National television. Not local. Nationwide. A story that started in my office was about to become a national debate." I turned off my phone, sat back, closed my eyes. Tomorrow was going to be bigger than anything I had imagined. And Madison? Madison was about to face the longest day of her life. Because by the next morning, the story had spread across the entire country, sparking outrage, praise, petitions, and even career-ending consequences. But the person who called me at 5:45 a.m. changed everything. The next morning began before sunrise, not because I wanted it to, but because my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. It buzzed relentlessly against the nightstand until the sound drilled into my half-asleep brain. I checked the clock. 5:45 a.m. I grabbed the phone, expecting another reporter, another producer, another late-night reaction. But the caller ID froze me. Madison. She had never, in her entire adult life, called me this early. Not even for emergencies. I answered with a tired breath. "Madison." For a moment, there was only soft breathing on the line. Not angry, not hysterical, just small. "Dad," she whispered, her voice raw from crying. "They fired Preston." I sat up straight. "Who fired him?" Her breath hitched. "His father. His entire family. They cut him off completely. Money, housing, the business, everything." I rubbed my forehead. I had expected backlash, but not this fast. "Why?" I asked. "Because of the video," she said, tears leaking into her words. "Because of what he said about the children. About Sister Catherine. About you. They said he disgraced the family." I let that settle. The Blackwoods, who once saw me as embarrassing and unfit to be seen with, were now ashamed of their own son. Madison continued, voice trembling. "They told him to pack up and move out by the end of the week. They said they don't want the scandal attached to their name. I wasn't shocked. Preston's family cared about image more than loyalty. They would have thrown their own ancestor under a bus if it meant preserving their legacy. What about you? I asked carefully. She sniffed softly. They're blaming me too. They said I made a fool of their son on national television. I closed my eyes for a long moment. The same family that convinced her she was above me had abandoned her at the first sign of trouble. Madison continued, now fully crying. I don't know what to do, Dad. I feel like everything is falling apart. People are messaging me nonstop. Strangers calling me a monster. Friends ignoring me. The Blackwoods pretending I never existed. Everything is collapsing. She wasn't being dramatic. She wasn't being manipulative. She was shattered. But pain isn't always a punishment. It can be a teacher. I kept my voice steady. Madison, I know this hurts. I know it feels like the world is closing in. But this is what accountability looks like. I'm scared, she choked. I don't know who I am without them. Without Preston. Without that life. That life. The one she tried to build on someone else's money. The one she used to replace me. The one that crumbled the moment real consequences arrived. I took a breath. Madison, I said. Who you are has nothing to do with money, or the people you tried to impress, or the world you thought made you better than the rest. She didn't respond, so I kept going. You lost yourself chasing people who didn't love you, people who loved your status, your image, your usefulness. A tiny sound escaped her, something between a sob and a realization. And now, I continued softly, you have a chance to find who you really are, she whispered. But everything hurts. I know, I said gently. Growth does. There was silence on the line for several seconds while she calmed herself. Then her voice steadied, just enough for me to hear the shift. Dad, I need to tell you something else. I braced myself. Preston wants to move to Florida, she whispered, to stay with his uncle. He says we should disappear for a while, start over where no one knows us. He wants me to go with him. She paused, then added, and I don't want to go. I blinked. This was the first real decision she'd made in months that wasn't wrapped in entitlement or arrogance. Why not? I asked quietly. Because, she swallowed hard. Because I don't want to run anymore. I don't want to keep pretending. And, her voice broke again. I don't want to lose you. I exhaled slowly. Madison, I'm here. But I can't save you. You have to take your own steps. She whispered. I know. Then, and this stunned me. She said, Dad, what should I do? It was the most honest question she had asked in a long time. I gave her the only advice that mattered. Start small, I said. Do something kind for someone who can't repay you. Make one difficult decision on your own. Begin there. She didn't argue. She didn't push back. She simply whispered, okay, and hung up. When I finally got to the restaurant that morning, I stepped into a storm I wasn't prepared for. Not a bad one, a good one, a huge one. My general manager rushed up to me so fast she nearly dropped the tablet she was holding. Boss, she gasped. You need to see this right now. What happened? Everything. She shoved the tablet into my hand. On the screen were dozens, no hundreds of notifications. Then I saw it. The national numbers. Overnight, the story had exploded. #1 on Twitter. Trending on Instagram Reels. Hundreds of thousands of shares. News channels debating it. Talk shows discussing it. A panel on CNN calling it the modern parable of entitlement versus generosity. Celebrity tweets. Financial analysts chiming in. Parenting experts weighing in. People arguing passionately on both sides. This father is a hero. This daughter needed to learn a lesson. No parent should humiliate their child publicly. She humiliated him first. And then, petition. Rename the new children's home after Martin Harris. Over 30,000 signatures in 12 hours. I stared at the screen, stunned. I never wanted fame. But now the story was too big. The entire country was talking about us. And then the restaurant TV flashed breaking news. Good Morning America interview request for Martin Harris officially confirmed. My jaw tightened. I wasn't looking for attention. But now, the spotlight was unavoidable. And the next 24 hours? They were about to get even louder. Because just when the entire country rallied around me, Preston issued a public statement. One that turned everything even uglier, and Madison made a choice that shocked everyone, including me. By mid-morning, the restaurant felt less like a place of business and more like a buzzing command center. Employees kept stopping by my table, showing me new articles, comments, TV segments, reaction videos, things I didn't ask for, but they couldn't help sharing. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a side. Everyone had a version of the story. But I wasn't interested in internet wars. I wanted peace. Unfortunately, that wasn't coming anytime soon. Around 11:20 a.m., just as I stepped into my office with a fresh cup of coffee, David burst through the door without knocking. "We've got a problem," he said. "What kind of problem?" He handed me his phone. A news headline blared across the screen. Preston Blackwood releases public statement. Claims he was set up and demands a public apology. I stared at it, the words almost too absurd to process. He what? I asked. David's expression was a perfect blend of disbelief and disgust. This clown is claiming the entire confrontation was manipulated to make him look bad. Says he was baited. Says you orchestrated it as revenge for not being invited to the wedding. I blinked slowly. He really said that? Oh, you haven't seen anything yet, David muttered, scrolling. He tapped a video. Preston appeared on screen, standing in front of a fountain in what looked like a hotel courtyard. His hair was perfectly gelled, his shirt crisp. He spoke in that overly rehearsed tone people use when they're coached by PR teams who don't realize the internet can smell lies from a mile away. I was ambushed, he began dramatically. The footage circulating online shows selective moments that misrepresent my intentions and my character. David scoffed. Selective? It was all filmed in one take. Preston continued. I was frustrated and emotional. I never meant to insult the children at the orphanage. I respect all charitable work. But Martin Harris took advantage of a vulnerable moment to portray me in a negative light. Vulnerable? I repeated. David nodded grimly. There's more. Preston wasn't done. I demand a public apology from Mr. Harris. My family is suffering professional and reputational damage because of this orchestrated media spectacle. David paused the video. That sound you hear in the background? That's the entire country laughing at him. I leaned back in my chair. I had truly underestimated the depth of the man's delusion. And what are people saying? I asked. David grinned, an actual grin. Want the short version? Yes. He's getting roasted alive. That didn't surprise me. The internet can be cruel, but it's rarely blind. Then why come to me? I asked. David sighed. Because his statement already hit every major news network. Reporters are asking for your response. If you stay silent, it'll look like you're dodging. I rubbed my temples. I didn't want this fight. I didn't want a war with my daughter's husband. I didn't want headlines, debates, memes, or online battles. But Preston had made the mistake of thinking public attention was a weapon he could handle. It'll burn him, I said quietly. On its own. Maybe, David replied. But he's not the real issue right now. I looked up. Madison saw the statement, David said. And she's on her way here. Madison arrived 20 minutes later. She didn't walk in wearing designer heels, sunglasses, and curated outfits like she used to. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair wasn't styled. She looked a human and exhausted. She stood at my office door, hesitant, like she didn't know if she was welcome. Dad, she said finally. Come in. She slipped inside, shut the door quietly, and sank into the chair across from mine. I didn't know he was going to do that, she said, her voice tight. That statement. I didn't approve it. He didn't even tell me. Do you agree with it? I asked. Her head snapped up. No, of course not. Then why are you here? She took a shaky breath. To tell you, she swallowed hard. To tell you I'm leaving him. I stared at her. Not with shock. With caution. Madison, I said softly. Don't make a huge life decision because you're scared or embarrassed. Leaving him won't erase the problems you created. I know, she said immediately, and that surprised me. She continued quietly. I'm not leaving him because of the internet, or because of the house, or because the world is calling him a monster. She looked down. I'm leaving him because I realized something when I saw the footage again last night. What did you realize? That he never defended you, she whispered. Not once. Not during the wedding. Not during the rehearsals. Not during the dinner. Not even when I cried in his car after throwing that tantrum in the restaurant. She paused. And that's when it hit me. I blamed you for everything. But he fed those feelings. Encouraged them. Wanted me to feel ashamed of you so I'd rely on him instead. There it was. The truth she had avoided seeing. The manipulation she had mistaken for love. And now? I asked. Now, she said softly. I want to start fixing the mess I made. I didn't hug her. I didn't scold her. I didn't offer forgiveness. I just looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time in years, she wasn't posturing. She wasn't performing. She wasn't pretending. She was just my daughter. A flawed, hurting human being trying, maybe for the first time, to grow. What do you need from me? I asked. She shook her head. Nothing, she whispered. Not money. Not a place to stay. Not your reputation. I just wanted you to know I'm not running away to Florida with him. And where will you go? She exhaled. I'll figure it out. I'll start over somewhere small. I'll get a job. A real one. I'll learn. It wasn't a solution, but it was a beginning. And beginnings matter. Before she left, she hesitated in the doorway. Dad. Yes. She turned, her eyes red but clearer than before. When you go on Good Morning America tomorrow, can I come with you? The question caught me completely off guard. But the meaning behind it, that hit hard. She wasn't asking to be seen. She wasn't asking to reclaim her image. She was asking to stand beside me, publicly, openly, for the first time since she abandoned me at that wedding. I didn't answer immediately. I let her wait, think, hope. Finally, I said, we'll talk about it tonight. And for the first time in years, she smiled. A real, fragile, grateful smile. She left the room quietly, but peace didn't follow her. Because 10 minutes later, David rushed back inside, holding his phone like it was on fire. Martin, he said, breathless, you need to sit down. Why? Because another video just dropped. I felt a cold tightening in my stomach. He turned the screen toward me. It was Preston. This time, he wasn't apologizing. He wasn't pleading. He wasn't even pretending. He was attacking me, Sister Catherine, the children, even Madison. And this video, it wasn't a statement. It was a threat. And once again, the entire country was watching. Because Preston's second video didn't just explode online. It triggered a legal firestorm, sparked national outrage, and forced me to make a decision that would change everything for Madison, for me, and for the children. David's face said everything before he even hit play. Alarm, disgust, and something else, something that made me sit up straighter. Fear. He tapped the screen and the video began. This time, Preston wasn't standing in a hotel courtyard with a rehearsed speech and carefully chosen words. No fountain. No designer backdrop. No PR mask. He was sitting in the driver's seat of a rental car. Sweating, angry, disheveled. His tie was gone, shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot from either rage or lack of sleep. And the first words he spoke were a declaration of war. I'm done playing nice. My stomach tightened. David muttered, he's losing it. Preston leaned toward the camera, breathing hard. You all think you know what happened. You don't. You only saw what they wanted you to see. He jabbed his finger aggressively at the camera. Martin Harris is not a hero. He's a manipulative, controlling old man who uses guilt and money to ruin people's lives. David exhaled sharply. He's gone off the deep end. But Preston wasn't done. He's hiding things. Things the public should know. Don't worship him. Don't praise him. He's not a good father. He's not a good person. And I'm going to prove it. The threat hung in the air like poison. Then he said the line that changed everything. And if the orphanage knew what I know about him, they'd never accept his money. David froze. I froze. And the entire country, watching this unfold in real time, froze too. He wasn't just slandering me. He was weaponizing the children's home. He leaned even closer, eyes wild. I'm warning you, Martin. Back off. Take your little donation stunt and shove it. Because if you don't, I'll ruin you. Completely. Then he ended with, you have 24 hours. The screen went black. David lowered the phone slowly. Martin. This just crossed into legal territory. I didn't speak. Couldn't speak. My pulse was steady, but something inside me had shifted. Gone was disappointment. Gone was frustration. What replaced it? Cold, crystalline clarity. He's threatening you, David continued. He's threatening your reputation, your business, your charity work, and the children, I said quietly. David nodded grimly. And the children. Within an hour, every major news outlet was talking about Preston's meltdown. Breaking news. 24 hours? Son-in-law of viral donor issues ominous threat. Experts describe video as unhinged and potentially criminal. Attorneys weigh in. Is this defamation? Extortion? Harassment? Live commentators dissected every sentence. Psychologists analyzed his behavior. Lawyers debated the legality of the threat. One anchor put it best. You don't go after an orphanage to win a personal fight. That crosses a moral line few people ever dare step over. Public sentiment flipped instantly. If people had been disgusted before, now they were furious. Petitions demanding Preston's arrest gained thousands of signatures. Calls flooded his remaining family's office. Someone even created a hashtag. Hashtag leave the kids out of it. I wished it were just internet outrage. But this was bigger now. Much bigger. At 1:12 p.m., Sister Catherine called me. Her voice trembled. Martin, is it true? Is he threatening us? He's trying to threaten me, I replied gently. But I won't let him drag the children into it. We're scared, she admitted. The teachers are panicking. Some donors are calling, asking if our name is being dragged into a scandal. I felt something break inside me. Not pain, not fear, resolve. Sister, I said softly, I'm going to fix this. You can't face this alone. I'm not alone, I said. You have my word. Preston will not touch the home. Not legally, not publicly, not through rumor, not through fear. There was a long exhale on the other side. God bless you, she whispered. Then came the call I knew was coming. The police. A detective from the Threat Management Division reached out personally. Mr. Harris, he said, we've seen the video. We need you to come down to the station to give an official statement. David insisted on coming with me. As we sat in the detective's office, he replayed the video again, pausing at key points. Here, he said, tapping the screen, is harassment. Tap. Another timestamp. Here is a targeted threat. Tap. And here is extortion. This alone is enough to open a case. David looked at me. Do we want to press charges? The question hung in the air. I closed my eyes. Pressing charges would destroy Preston entirely. Legally, socially, professionally. He would never recover. Part of me wanted to say yes. But another part, the part shaped by Sister Catherine, by my childhood, by the years of struggling and forgiveness, stopped me. No, I said finally. Not yet. The detective nodded, unsurprised. Fair enough. But know this, if he escalates even an inch, we're stepping in whether you want us to or not. This isn't just about you anymore. He's threatening the public. I nodded. He was right. This wasn't personal anymore. This was dangerous. When we got back to the restaurant, Madison was waiting outside my office. Eyes swollen, hands shaking. Her expression a mix of fear and determination. Dad, she whispered, Tell me you saw the video. I did. Her voice cracked. He's gone mad. I don't even recognize him. He's not the man I married. People show their real selves when they lose control, I said softly. She stared at me with something like dawning horror. I can't defend him anymore, she whispered. Not even in my mind. She took a breath. I want to go with you tomorrow. To Good Morning America. I want to stand with you publicly. I want people to know I'm not on his side. That I'm choosing differently now. This wasn't about clout. This was survival, growth, change, and something else, something purer. Accountability. I studied her for a long moment. Then I nodded once. All right. Her shoulders slumped with relief as tears filled her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. But before she could say anything else, David's phone buzzed. He read the message. His eyes widened. Then he looked at me, shaken. Martin, you need to see this. He handed me the phone. On the screen was a new update. A new headline. A new catastrophe. Breaking: Preston Blackwood has gone missing after posting threatening video. And beneath it, police warn he may attempt to confront Martin Harris in person. The room fell silent. Completely silent. Something dangerous had begun. Something unpredictable. Something I could no longer ignore. Because Preston didn't just disappear. He left behind a trail of chaos that pushed the situation to the edge of violence, forcing me to make the hardest decision of my life, and turning the next 24 hours into a nightmare. For a long moment, all I could do was stare at David's phone. Preston Blackwood missing. Police issue caution. Missing. Not arrested. Not hiding. Not apologizing. Missing. When unstable people disappear right after issuing threats, it rarely means they're taking a peaceful vacation. David swallowed hard. Martin, we need to take this seriously. Madison was trembling. Dad, she whispered. He wouldn't come here, right? He wouldn't show up. Her voice broke on the last words. I wanted to promise her he wouldn't. Couldn't. We don't know, I said gently. But we're not going to take risks. Within minutes, the restaurant was locked down. Not by panic, but by protocol. David contacted private security. The police sent a patrol car to monitor the area. Staff were instructed not to let anyone in through the back entrance. Everyone stayed alert. Customers still came and went, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. But inside my office, tension hung thick enough to taste. Madison paced back and forth, her breath shaky. He's not dangerous, she said, trying to convince herself more than us. He's angry, yes, but he's not a violent guy. David looked at her gently but firmly. Madison, angry people do stupid things. Humiliated men do dangerous things. And right now, your husband is both. She flinched. Ex-husband, she whispered. I'm done with him. But the truth was, even if she'd emotionally detached, Preston was clinging on harder than ever. His desperation turning feral. At 4:30 p.m., the detective called again. He's abandoned his rental car, he reported. Found near an abandoned rest stop off Highway 12. Wallet inside. Phone smashed. That's not good, David muttered. No, the detective said. That means he doesn't want to be tracked. Madison's knees buckled, and she collapsed into a chair. He's coming for us, she whispered. I know him. He wants someone to blame. I put a hand on her shoulder. You're safe, I told her. I won't let anything happen to you. She cried quietly, shaking with fear and regret. Dad, I should have left him earlier. I should have seen this. I should have. Stop, I said. You're here now. That's what matters. David's jaw clenched. We need to get her out of here. I nodded. Madison, I said gently. Go upstairs to the staff room. Stay there with Maria. Don't leave until I tell you. She hesitated, then hugged me tightly. It had been years since she'd hugged me like that. Desperately, honestly, without pride or ego. Be careful, she whispered. I will. She left, wiping her eyes, and the door closed behind her with a soft click. By sunset, The sky had turned a deep, heavy orange, like it was warning us. The evening news replayed Preston's disappearance on the restaurant television. Authorities urge caution as search continues for Preston Blackwood. People at tables glanced up from their meals. Some whispered, some frowned, others shook their heads. A few recognized me and gave sad, sympathetic looks. But no one approached. No one bothered me. They could sense something was wrong. At 7:15 p.m., David checked the security cameras. "Nothing so far," he said. "Parking lot is clear. Back alley clear. We're good." I tried to believe him, but there was a strange, electric feeling in the air, like the world was holding its breath. I stepped outside for fresh air, just for a moment. The street was quiet, lamp posts flickering with a soft glow. Cars passed occasionally. Nothing out of the ordinary, until a sound, a soft, crunching sound. From the side of the building, I froze. "David," I called quietly. He stepped out a moment later. "You hear that?" We listened. Silence. Then, crunch. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from the alley. David whispered, "Get inside. Now." But instead of retreating, I stepped forward, just enough to see around the corner. My heart nearly stopped. A man was standing halfway down the alley, partially hidden in shadow. Tall, disheveled, clothes wrinkled, hair wild, arms shaking. "Preston." David pulled me back sharply. "Are you insane? Get inside." But Preston had already seen me. He stepped closer, eyes wide and unblinking. "Martin," he said. His voice cracked, unstable. "You ruined my life." David pulled out his phone. Preston's gaze snapped to the movement. "Don't," he growled. "Don't call them." People passing by on the street didn't notice him. He kept just far enough in the shadows. David whispered, "Martin, get inside. Now." But Preston took another step. "I lost everything because of you," he said. "You embarrassed me. You humiliated me. You turned the whole world against me." "No," I said calmly. "You did that yourself." He shook his head violently. "You think you're better than me. You think you're some saint because you donated a house, because you gave money. You think that makes you a hero?" "No," I said. "I think it makes me someone who wants to help the people you mocked." His eyes narrowed. "Those kids don't matter," he snapped. And that was the line. David didn't hesitate. He dialed the police. Preston lunged forward angrily. "You think you can call on me?" he screamed. "I'll end you." Before he could reach us, headlights flashed at the end of the alley. 2 police cars. Sirens silent. Lights off, but fast. Preston froze. "Preston Blackwood," an officer shouted. "Don't move." Preston took one final step toward me, and that was it. Police tackled him, pinned him, handcuffed him, dragged him back. He didn't fight. He didn't scream. He just stared at me as they put him in the patrol car. Stared with a hollow, broken expression. "You did this," he mouthed. Then the door slammed shut. When Madison heard the news upstairs, she broke down sobbing. Not with love, not with grief, with release, with closure, with the realization that the nightmare was finally over. But the danger wasn't, because that arrest, that confrontation, that alley, all of it was caught on camera. A passerby had filmed everything, and by morning, the entire world would watch Preston's final downfall. And my name, my story, would become bigger than I ever wanted. Bigger than I could control. Because the next day, as I sat on live national television with my daughter beside me, the world finally heard the truth, and I made a decision that stunned millions, including Madison herself. The next morning didn't feel real. I woke up before the alarm, before the sun, even sitting in the dim glow of a hotel lamp paid for by the Good Morning America production team. My clothes for the interview were neatly laid out on the dresser. A suit I hadn't worn since my daughter's college graduation. Funny how life circles back to the same milestones, but with different meanings. I washed my face, tightened my tie, and stepped out into the quiet hallway. Madison was already waiting outside her room. Hair tied simply, neutral makeup, hands shaking slightly, just enough for me to notice, not enough for the cameras to pick up. "Ready?" she whispered. I nodded, but inside, neither of us truly was. The ride to the studio was silent except for the occasional radio mention of Preston's arrest. Viral case continues to dominate national headlines. Father faced with alleged threats from son-in-law. Public outcry over remarks targeting orphanage children. Madison flinched every time his name played. "He's being held without bail," she murmured, staring out the window. "Dad, I'm sorry. For everything." She wasn't talking about yesterday. She wasn't talking about the alley. She meant all of it. The wedding, the insults, the entitlement, the years of distance. I placed my hand gently over hers. "We'll talk," I said. "But not here. Not yet." She nodded. The studio was a swirl of bright lights, organized chaos, and hushed urgency. Like a controlled storm, producers rushed around with earpieces and clipboards. Assistants checked microphones. A makeup artist dabbed powder onto my forehead. "Mr. Harris, we're honored to have you," one producer told me. "We've never seen a story spread this fast. America is watching." I hadn't asked for America to watch. I only hoped they'd listen. Next to me, Madison's mic was clipped to her collar. She took slow breaths, trying to steady herself. "You'll be okay," I whispered. She nodded, wiping the corner of her eye discreetly. We were led onto the set where the main anchor, Alina Brooks, stood smiling warmly. "Martin, Madison, thank you for coming." We sat. Cameras adjusted. A countdown echoed through the studio. "Going live in 5, 4, 3, 2. The red light blinked on. And suddenly, the whole country was in the room with us. Alina began. "Good morning, America. Today we're joined by the father whose story has taken over social media this week, Martin Harris, and his daughter Madison." The screen behind us displayed the now infamous headlines. "Father donates $1 million home instead of bailing out daughter son-in-law's threats cause national outrage, orphanage receives life-changing gift." Alina turned to me. "Martin, America has seen the footage. They've heard Preston's statements. They saw the confrontation in the alley. But we haven't heard from you. Why did you choose to donate the house instead of helping your daughter financially?" I took a breath, because the truth required calm. "I gave Madison everything," I began. "Maybe too much, but I realized giving her more wouldn't save her. It would ruin her." Madison looked down, tears forming. "I wasn't punishing her. I was protecting her from becoming someone she's not meant to be." Alina leaned forward. "And the orphanage?" I felt my throat tighten. "That home saved me as a child," I said. "They gave me warmth, a bed, kindness. They taught me dignity. I would have been nothing without them. Donating the house wasn't charity. It was giving back what I owed." The audience, watching from their homes, felt the weight of it. Alina shifted to Madison. "Madison, you've received a lot of criticism online, but you're here today. Why?" Madison inhaled deeply. "For accountability," she whispered. "For owning what I did. I hurt my father. I mocked him. I let my husband influence me. I thought money mattered more than integrity." Her voice cracked. "And I was wrong." The studio fell silent. Even the crew paused. She continued, wiping tears. "When I saw the videos, when I saw what Preston said about those children, when I saw my father standing there, alone, doing the right thing," she swallowed, "I realized I had become everything I swore I'd never be." She turned to me, not the camera. "Dad, I'm sorry. And it wasn't PR. Or rehearsed. Or forced. It was raw. Real." Alina gave us a moment before continuing. "Martin, people want to know, do you forgive her?" Madison stiffened. I didn't answer for several seconds. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a doorway, and doorways can stay closed for years. I looked at Madison, truly looked at her, and I saw the pride fall away, the arrogance stripped out, the young woman underneath, the one I raised, peeking through the cracks. "I forgive you," I said softly, "but that doesn't erase what happened." Forgiveness is a beginning, not an ending. Madison nodded through tears. I know. Alina smiled gently, then asked, and what happens now? I looked into the camera for the first time with intent. What happens now, I said, is rebuilding. Not reputations. Not wealth. Character. Alina nodded, impressed. And Preston. I shook my head. I wish him healing, but I won't let him threaten my daughter, myself, or those children ever again. It was firm, direct, unmistakable. The interview wrapped with applause in the studio, even though no audience was present. Crew members clapped. Workers smiled. The stage manager wiped her eyes. When the cameras went off, Madison hugged me, tightly, trembling, desperate. Dad, thank you. For what? For not giving up on me, she whispered. I held her back. I almost did, I admitted. But you came home. She cried harder. Can we start over? She asked. I nodded. Yes, but slowly. That's okay, she said, voice breaking. Slow is good. We walked out of the studio into a cool morning breeze. The sun was rising. People stopped us, not for autographs, not for fame, for gratitude, for choosing kindness, for setting boundaries, for giving those kids a future, for showing what real parenting looks like. Madison walked beside me. Not behind me, not ashamed, just there. A beginning, not perfect, but real. That night, Sister Catherine sent me a photo. The children outside the orphanage holding a sign. Thank you, Mr. Harris. You gave us a home. I stared at it for a long while, and for the first time in many, many years, I felt at peace.